Saturday. That means it's the weekend and we do movies. Today we have a big one. We have a loaded gun. I'm calling this a loaded gun because there are so many different ways I can talk to you about the 2021 DC animated Injustice. If you're not familiar with Injustice, it was a video game where essentially everybody had to fight Superman. Superman became evil. The video game company backlogged it and said, let's create the scenario of how the Man of Steel goes berserk and everyone needs to fight him. This caught on. It caught on so well. It had a successful toy line, comic book series, and here, now we have landed with an animated feature. And I put this on to prove a point. So let's get into it. I'll explain my
Quiet
point.
on the set!
Camera speed.
Down production, take one.
Action!
So often within my commentary on this podcast, on YouTube, on live streams, I preach about there's this thing called Elseworlds that even James Gunn, he's pushed the idea that they're going to continue doing Elseworlds. And Elseworlds are alternate timelines and dimensions. Marvel, who really wasn't big on it for decades, but Marvel, through the Marvel Cinematic Universe, went hard in, just all the way in on the multiverse. The multiverse and Elseworlds are essentially the same thing, where we just have very dumb ideas, I'll say, very silly ideas. Like, what if the Man of Steel was Russian and Joseph Stalin and he wasn't American? What if that little asteroid landed in the Caribbean and we have a Caribbean Clark Kent, right? It's insane. A lot of it makes no sense on premise, and often it just unravels. But every once in a while, one of these Elseworlds, one of these alternate stories, it just catches on with what the take is. And usually that's where it lies dead. It will be inspired by a certain position. Hey, what if Wonder Woman was Hawaiian? What if Bruce Wayne? What if Bruce Wayne was raised in Imperial Japan, right? And you're like, oh my god, okay, all right. I would watch Tony Stark working for Adolf Hitler. I would watch that. But often that's where it dies. And the reason is, by the time we're introduced to these alternate threads, we're so familiar with the character, we feel like we're friends with it. We almost feel like the character is real. So we know the behavior of the character and the psychology and the logic that character uses. So essentially, we have our own battery of truths and falses, positives and negatives. Just for example, let's just say we got Harrison Ford's Deckard from Blade Runner and we threw him into the RoboCop universe. Deckard is going to have to act and perform a certain way in that universe, even though he's a fish out of the water. This is always a tightrope. So what we get is, we usually get kind of good conflicts. We have great beginnings where they tell you how everything is different and deviate. Like there's all these cool deviations and it's thrilling and there's such a nice dopamine drip. And every once in a while, I get sucked up into being proven wrong. So I put on Injustice 2021 absolutely at random. And I know kind of how it goes. The Joker kills a impregnated Lois Lane and it sets Superman off. Wonder Woman sides with Clark Kent, and then we basically have the rest of the DC universe. Now, eventually, he gets allies that are other heroes and villains along the way, but it's almost just like, it becomes like a civil war. We have, the Man of Steel with his side, and then we basically have the people that just want things to go back to normal on the other side. There's a scene in this movie where the Atom, who's microscopic, has a microscopic piece of kryptonite, and he's in Superman's brain, and it just takes radioactive gas to kill him. And then you're just like, well, what happens with that piece of kryptonite though? Or when the Atom is running through Superman's brain or his cells, because he's so freaking small. Why doesn't he just jab that kryptonite into like somewhere? Because he knows he's dying soon. Like he knows he can't escape the gas or something. So we get logical missteps as soon as we try and take out the character. And the only way these guys can combat Superman, they have to go to another dimension and bring in another Superman. So why not just go to another dimension and kidnap a pregnant Lois Lane and just like do just do that, okay? And you can mind wipe her too. Mind wipe the other dimension, Lois Lane, as we saw in Identity Crisis. Mind wipe her, make her feel like she's the one that he knows, and then everyone's off to the races. We're good to go. This is what I'm talking about, to how it breaks down, because the beginning of this is so thrilling, it's so good, but we kind of never buy Superman even killing the Joker in this movie. You just don't buy it. You just in a way, you get Superman being a little bit of a wimpy wimp, a little bit of too much of a Boy Scout. He's not on the mission. He's so enthralled that he has a child coming. Like that's out of the character. The Man of Steel cannot have a baby, should not have a baby. He should not ever wake up in bed next to Lois Lane. I get it, they got married in the comic book, but save that for, I don't know, just don't even acknowledge it. If Superman gets married in the comics, here's what you gotta do. You just ignore it. Just like you got your publicity, you got a little bit of your money pop, but just freaking ignore. I mean, I would put Superman so far in deep space, it would take him 30 years to get back to Earth in DC comic book time. But again, I get a little bit too critical about some of these moves. I don't feel like Peter Parker should marry Mary Jane. I think it's okay if Reed Richards marries Sue Storm, even though, does she become Sue Richards? I don't know. But so within this movie, we get these things where Harley Quinn is a good guy, calls Superman killed the Joker, and she's kind of a surrogate now and a sidekick to Green Arrow, and so we get these like cool combinations of characters. But we could also get that in a non-universe shifting adventure, meaning we can just do a adventure where Green Arrow and Harley Quinn have to team up, but we know at the end of that adventure they're going to have to return to center. So a lot of that stuff's just, I watch it, annoying. I feel like this movie is well mapped out, is well played out. I think the drama is there. I think the action's there. All these positives, like all the positives you want. It does interest you enough to want to know the story for the video game and to potentially read the comic books that were like really well received. But it just makes you think, well, I'd rather just spend time with the Superman like I like, that I know that actually here I'm pretty confident that they're getting wrong because they're going through low-hanging fruit ideas. It's a lot of stuff, but there's a positive to where it generates a level of interest. And where I started with this is I'm watching it and I'm just saying to myself, I'm like, holy crap, I'm wrong, dude. This is a lot of fun to watch. This is just really cool, and I want to see what happens next. And by the time we get into the resolution, there's no real resolution that's plausible, that's believable, mostly because we know how powerful and strong Superman is. And here's the wild thing. A lot of people like to say, well, he holds back, and he holds back because he's a Boy Scout. We gotta put that idea to bed. We gotta explore other paths, and we essentially have to say maybe potentially he's not completely invincible. He's all powerful, but he's fallible, and he can potentially make a wrong decision and things like that. I mean, we have to work in opportunities for him to get his back up against the wall within the story, and it needs to work. It needs to kind of have its own little logic to it. Injustice, in my view, is advertising for DC Comics. You should watch Injustice and then want to go to the comic book shop to learn more about these characters, and then you get the DC continuity in front of your face at the comic shop. These, in my view, are great infomercials for the world of comic books. These are not comic books, and that's the bigger point. I think production-wise, I think character design-wise, I just think this is it's a feat that runs on all cylinders. And I want to say, coming after this, we get some, some of the animation just looks a little bit more choppy, a little bit more different. Watchmen, Chapter 1, Chapter 2, I'm looking at you. We still have to do Watchmen Chapter 2 on this channel. But DC animation seems to have shifted a little bit in their production. I like the flow of how this looks, just with the frame rate. I applaud everyone involved. And AKAPAD, this is like a great, crazy, wild, fun idea. But in no way should it be like a staple or a franchise or even exist among DC Comics. DC comic book fans should watch, hear about this and reject it, or hear about the video game and reject it, be a little bit curious but move on. We should crave things to be within as much continuity as possible, or if it's a sidebar or a tangent continuity, meaning we're finding a little spot between two storylines or two things that happen that we know we can kind of get into. What that will do is that triggers everyone to buy everything, not just keep buying Injustice and then you move on. Think of all the people that got involved with DC Comics through Injustice, and once Injustice said it was over or it died off, they left comics. That's not the way, not the path, if I'm going to quote the Mandalorian. AKAPADers, sorry, man, it's a rant. I feel like I was just a little bit angry on this one. Coming up, a little bit of a teaser. We'll be getting into Captain America on this very podcast. All media Captain America because of the upcoming movie. So let's hijack some of that attention. Rock and roll, everyone. Love.
Okay, that's a wrap.